about another half hour to get more work done. Then I realized it's already 11:31. So I think that Ms. Wortman will probably take it away.
I will. Well, this meeting is being recorded as the pop-up just came up. So I'd like to welcome everyone formally to the December 9th Metropolitan Area Planning Council Executive Committee meeting. I am MAPC. Okay, and there's the pop-up. Thank you. I am President Erin, and I want to formally welcome you all to the meeting. Just so we get some of the housekeeping out of the way, the Executive Committee meeting is being conducted remotely via Zoom, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020, and as extended via Section 2475. Signed by Governor Baker on June 16, 2021. Section 2475 also allows for town councils, state boards, and other bodies to continue to hold remote public meetings until April 1st, 2022, to provide public access to the meeting while limiting the potential for abuse for video conferencing technology. The public may view the proceedings at youtube.com/user/MAPC Metro Boston. Just keep in mind that if you share your camera, which I hope you choose to, you may be seen as you can see all of us. So just keep that in mind as you move forward with that. And with that, we're going to do roll call. I just first want to acknowledge Andrea, whose camera's off, but she is providing our tech assistance as well as minutes today for the meeting. So thank you so much in advance, Andrea, for doing that. And with that, we are going to do a very quick roll call, which I will take attendance. So if you can come off mute so you can verbally say that you're here, I'd appreciate it. So here we go. Sharonda Almeida.
Here.
Keith Bergman.
Here.
Karen Canfield. Adam Chapdelaine.
Here.
Bob Cohen. Mayor Curtatone. Tom Daniel.
Here.
John DePriest.
Here.
Yolanda Greaves. Sandra Hackman.
Here.
Mo Handel is not here. Tabor Keeley.
Here.
Angie Liu.
Here.
Steve Olenoff.
Here.
Caitlin Pasafaro. George Proakis.
Here.
Courtney Rainey. Jenny Raitt. Vandana Rao.
Here. Present.
Okay, thank you. Sam Seidel.
Here.
Steve Silvera.
Here.
Lauren Shirtliff. Mayor Spicer. Juan Vega. Elaine Vina.
Here.
Erin Wortman. That's me. I'm here too. Thank you all so much for doing that. Apologies again in advance if I mispronounced your name. I do my best, but please correct me on the side if I have mispronounced your name, because I'd like to say that correctly. Okay.
Yeah, it looks like Jenny is here as well.
Yep, Jenny's
Awesome.
here. Yolanda is trying to get in. But
Okay. Well, if we
Just
have just
reset the
finished
link.
attendance, so if you missed that attendance, just type it in the chat so staff can capture that, not only the time, but that you are here. So next up on the agenda is the approval of minutes from September 22nd, 2021 and October 20th, 2021.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, motion made by, I believe, John DePriest.
Yes.
We need like 5 screens when I do these meetings, I'll be honest. 2 just doesn't cut it. And who is that second by?
I'll
Me.
second.
Okay, George Proakis bumped up on my color, my little screen here. So I'm going to say motion made by John DePriest, second made by George Proakis. Any discussion, comments, questions before we vote? All right, great. Because it is a remote meeting, roll call is always required. So please come off mute. I'm going to go really quick on this. Sharonda,
Aye.
Keith,
Aye.
Karen, Adam,
Aye.
Bob, Mayor Curtatone, Tom Daniel,
Aye.
John DePriest,
Aye.
Yolanda,
Aye.
Sandra,
Aye.
Mo, Tabor,
Aye.
Angie,
Aye.
Steve Olenoff,
Aye.
Caitlin, George,
Aye.
Courtney, Jenny,
Aye.
Vandana,
Aye.
Sam,
Aye.
Steve Silvera,
Aye.
Lauren, Mayor Spicer, Juan, Elaine,
Aye.
Erin, aye. Motion passes. Thank you so much, everyone. Okay, next up, report of the treasurer. I'm going to call on Treasurer Sam for a report.
Thank you, President Aaron, and hello to everybody. First day of snow, I think, for the year, maybe. We are looking at the August 2021 income statement this month. We listed September as well, but those numbers are still getting crunched. So we'll look at that at our next meeting. This goes back a couple of months. And the overall picture is the numbers are good. The direct labor was high. In Sheila's little note to me, she said we were all back at work and working hard, and that's reflected in the direct labor number. And the total administrative expenses were about what was projected, actually a little bit low, which gave us an overhead rate below our approved overhead rate. And that's always, generally speaking, a good thing for the month, 114%. And that left our cumulative yearly overhead rate at 118%, which is exactly what our approved overhead rate is. So those numbers are very good. Again, we're back a couple of months, so we've got a little bit of catching up to do. This is still reflecting the early part of the fiscal year, and it's reflecting the summer activities. So we'll see how this all goes through the fall. But that really does complete the treasurer's report. There's nothing else particularly of note this month. I would entertain. Yeah, so please. Sorry.
I would add a couple of things if I could, but we could do those either before or after the treasurer's report is approved. Want me to go ahead? Okay. Is Sheila present? I'm not quite sure if she is. I don't see her.
Yes, I am.
Oh, you are. There you are. Okay, good. I wanted to note that one of the things that Sheila has been working on very hard over the course of the last couple of months has been the development of our approved overhead rate or an indirect cost rate, as it's called, with the Department of the Interior. And this is a somewhat obscure but very important activity that we have been going through because we are, in large measure, people all need to remember this all the time, a federally funded agency. The federal government provides directly or indirectly the lion's share of our receipts, actually, more than any other source. And this year, the Economic Development Administration decided they were not satisfied with an indirect cost rate approved by MassDOT. They insisted that we go through the federal process. That involves, oddly, the Department of the Interior, which is on contract with the EDA to determine indirect cost rates. And it is a very complex and challenging process, which Sheila went through and which, honestly, a number of our colleague RPAs in the rest of the state have also had to go through. I think what triggered this probably was the large outflow of cash from EDA for first the CARES Act and then ARPA. We have been the beneficiaries of that money thus far from the CARES Act, hopefully getting more. Unfortunately, something that comes along with that is this new process. It's not a new process, but we've never had to participate in it before. We received approval just a few days ago for the overhead rate. It's virtually identical to the overhead rate we've been working on. It involved hours and days of work by Sheila from a finance perspective and supporting her Margie Weinberger from a legal perspective. But we were able to get it done. and to do so in a secure way financially for the agency moving forward. We avoided surprises. We answered their questions adequately, and the cost rate is in the process of being signed at this moment in time. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. Angie, allow me to make, if I could, one more point on a different issue, which is just that we continue to see a substantial amount of flux in the staffing of the agency. I know people know this, but I think it's important to acknowledge it. It's partly a result of new work practices and job expectations after COVID. It is in large measure people wanting to move to parts of the country where they can live near their family and more readily buy a home. I've had that one several times, lost people to Albany, to Hartford, to Illinois, to a variety of other places. And it's also, to some extent, the fact that there are some interesting new job opportunities down the street at City Hall Plaza. And they seem to be interested in virtually everybody who works at MAPC. It's something I might have to discuss with the mayor, I think. But it is a reality. And we're just seeing change. We have been able to fill almost every one of those positions. Tremendous credit goes to our human resources staff under Angela and Holly's direction, and to the individual directors and managers for their work filling these positions. I continue to remain more concerned about having enough people to spend the money we have than I am about having the money to pay the people. And I'm not alone in this as a manager. I think a lot of people face this situation. So I just wanted to acknowledge that, to thank people for their work. We have seen a 25% turnover in the MAPC staff since the beginning of COVID, and we will see more. That's just the way it's going to be. And we're going to survive. We're going to come out of it very well. We're hiring new, brilliant people. But if you see them, welcome them. Understand that they may be getting up to speed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Angie, I see your hand up. I don't have all the faces in front of me, but Angie, I see yours. So why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, I just have a quick question, Mark. Regarding the first thing that you talked about, which is this year it had to go through this much more stringent process with the Department of Interior, and it's probably because of the huge influx and outflow of funds. Do you have any sense, is this a one-time event, or is this going to be more of a regular thing? Because I do hear you that, it took a lot more time, staff time to do this, which is taking away time. They could be working on other things.
Well, it doesn't affect our staff too much. It affects, our planning staff. It affects our finance staff. It affects Sheila. It affects legal. And to a smaller degree, it affects our EDD director who manages our work with, our EDD manager who manages our work with EDA, and that's Raul Gonzalez, who many of you know. I think we're in a stable situation at the moment. We're going to apply this overhead rate to our EDA funds. It does not appear that they will expect that we have to apply it to the other funds. We're going to continue to be able to work with our MassDOT overhead rate, which is essentially identical on those other funds. There will be an annual process that we have to go through. I think we're going to be more used to it, and they'll be more used to us. They'll understand some of the vagaries of our organization and probably won't ask the questions. When we initially filed, I think they came back, Sheila, with a list of 14 questions. That was a little scary. I don't think there'll be 14 questions the next time. But it is going to take some time. EDA is an important source of funds, especially because of all the CARES and ARPA money. And these are the rules they lay down for us, and we need to comply with them. Sheila, I don't know if you want to add anything or not.
No, you covered everything. The annual process will be done after we complete each audit for the fiscal year.
Other questions, thoughts, comments? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to accept the treasurer's report.
So moved.
Yolanda Greaves moves.
Yep.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second from Tabor Keeley. President Aaron, can I hand this back to you for the vote?
Of course you can. Seeing no other questions or comments at this time, please unmute. We're going to do roll call for the motion before us, which is to accept the treasurer's report. So here we go. Sharonda.
Aye.
Keith.
Aye.
Karen. Adam.
Aye.
Bob. Mayor Curtatone. Tom Daniel.
Aye.
John DePriest.
Aye.
Yolanda.
Aye.
Sandra.
Aye.
Mo. Tabor.
Aye.
Angie.
Aye.
Steve Olenoff.
Aye.
Caitlin. George.
Aye.
Courtney. Jenny.
Aye.
Vandana.
Aye.
Sam.
Aye.
Steve Silvera.
Aye.
Lauren. Mayor Spicer. Juan. Elaine.
Aye. I
And
think.
Erin. Aye. And with that, the motion passes. Thank you so much, Sam, for your treasurer's report. Thank you, Sheila. Thank you, the Finance Committee, and thank you for the Finance Department for all your work on this and your upcoming work or ongoing work, I guess. There's never upcoming, it's just ongoing work on this department. Thank you. All right, next up on the agenda is the report of the Executive Director, Mark. Take it away. Mark, you have to unmute first. We're almost 2 years in, so it's not a big deal.
I'm sorry. I'm often embarrassed by what I think is the age-related and gender-related inability to unmute. So we have a 2-month executive director's report. This time, the staff has been unusually voluble in terms of their submissions to the ED report. So it started out at 34 pages. Ms. Linehan and I have managed to wrestle that so far down to 28. I am bound and determined to shave a few more off before I send it to you. And I will do that hopefully before the end of the week or maybe on Monday. And will always be available to entertain questions if you have them at that point in time. I will highlight a few issues from that report that I think are, will be of particular interest to folks. The Arts and Culture team has presented key findings and final recommendations to the Somerville Arts Space Task Force project that I know George is familiar with. This is a very important project working on the issue of space for artists, which has always been a difficult situation in the urban environment, especially in our hot market cities. Increasingly, it's an issue of concern and opportunity in some of our suburban communities. And it has definitely been impacted by COVID because the arts community was one of the sectors of the economy most heavily hit by the pandemic and the recession. Excuse me. And we see this study of the risks that face artist space in Somerville as being an important precursor to a future line of work for us. I know George is familiar with this. This was a challenging project. We had actually a couple of staff changes in the middle of it, but we've now made the recommendations, and our hope is that Somerville will be able to use those recommendations to strengthen their support for artists in what is a very important community for art. Our clean energy staff during the last couple of weeks, late November, finally issued the Municipal Net Zero Playbook, which we've been working on for a number of years, and which provides to cities and towns recommendations about how to achieve their net zero goals from a climate perspective. I will circulate the blog post for that. I'm very proud of the team for their work on this. I'm very proud of all the people who worked not only at MAPC, but from individual cities and towns and our allied organizations to put this net zero playbook together. It's a big accomplishment I think will be very useful to our cities and towns, particularly to those that are very focused on improving their energy footprint, on reducing their energy footprint overall. The Data Services and Economic Development team have been working very hard on a series of broadband issues, mostly related to digital access. not only the lack of equipment and online service, but also the need to improve capability and capacity for people to use those services. Incredibly important, more important, obviously, now in this, I don't know, what do we call it? The post-COVID world or the post-COVID new normal, I'm not quite sure. We've been doing two projects that I would draw attention to, although honestly, there have been others. One is with the CDC Urban Edge along the Columbus Avenue corridor in Boston. And the second is with 3 cities north of the city of Boston, Chelsea, Everett, and Revere. In each case, trying to help them to first discern and map their digital divide, and then to try and implement solutions. One of the interesting things that's been found, and this is true actually nationally, is that about 25% of all of the digital divide is entirely located in public and subsidized housing. And that is a challenge. It obviously indicates the racial implications and the income implications of the digital divide, but it's also an opportunity because it is a very well-defined and relatively narrow set of places where if you can actually improve the situation in those buildings, you can take a big bite out of the digital divide in your community. So kudos to the economic development team and the digital services team in data services for really just tremendously ramping up MAPC's involvement in the activities to fix the digital divide. The last item I want to mention is just to thank Martin Pillsbury and Leah Robbins and Christian Brandt, 3 members of our staff who are working with the North Shore Water Resiliency Task Force, which is spearheaded by Senator Bruce Tarr, to try and finally, after years of concern and effort, find some useful solutions that people can buy into regarding the tremendous stress facing the Ipswich River watershed. We play a facilitator's role and a research role, a policy recommendation role in this task force. We're not voting members of the task force, but we bring our technical expertise to it. We're very thankful for Senator Tarr for really spearheading this issue. And we're thankful, honestly, to the people from the water districts, from the cities and towns, and other stakeholders who have come together and said, they've recently signed a charter, actually, saying we are going to find ways to overcome this issue. We're not just going to keep talking about it as we have for the last 30 years. And Martin and Leah and Christian are doing a tremendous amount of work on that. And I just wanted to acknowledge that work and thank them tremendously. I think I'll pause there, Erin. It's more sort of a taste of the things that will be in the ED report, but we have lots of other work to do today.
Sounds good. Are there any questions for Mark on the items before us? All right, seeing none. Oh, I'm sorry, Vandana?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the work that Martin and the rest of the team there at MAPC are doing up in the Ipswich. I think that's critically important, as we all know that water resources in the Ipswich have been strained for quite some time, or let's just say Ipswich has been a so-called stressed watershed, a stressed basin for more than 20 years. And some of the interconnections that those communities have had with MWRA or with other suppliers outside of the Ipswich have certainly helped local conditions. But for MAPC to be involved and have be involved in a dialogue and help those communities continue to find other solutions is critically important. So I just wanted to acknowledge and appreciate MAPC's role in that effort there.
Great point. Thank you.
Thank you, Vandana.
I think a lot of people share that sentiment for sure. Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, I was thanking Vandana. Then I thought I should also maybe, even though I wish I didn't have to, say a little bit about COVID. Obviously, we're seeing numbers go up. The staff is spending more and more time on COVID issues again. Not that we ever really stopped, but it's now an increasing amount of time. We've restored regular meetings of the sort of leadership team at the agency dealing with this issue. We had a meeting last week with mayors, Governor Baker, Lieutenant Governor Polito, and Secretary Sutters. The governor was mainly interested in talking with us about expanding vaccination opportunities in our cities and towns. We all agree that that's necessary for vaccination, for regular vaccination against COVID, for boosters, and now for shots in the 5 to 11-year-old range. At the same time, one of the things he's basically asking for is, localities to share part of that burden. And there's hardly any water in the well at this point in time. The local boards of health are extremely stressed and stretched. They've now taken over contact tracing responsibilities from the state. And, we are working with the administration and localities to try and expand vaccination opportunities. At the same time, I need to be honest about the fact that for many of our communities, it is very, very challenging at this moment in time. We are also, we also had another meeting among mayors and one of our epidemiological experts without the administration present. That was on Monday of this week, Lizzie, I believe. And it was very sobering information about what the winter may hold. I know that at MAPC, we have tied our reopening of the office to a series of metrics that we've been tracing. And right now, we're open on a voluntary basis. I'd say 10 to 15% of the staff is in on any given day. But as we are looking at the numbers, I am weighing the possibility that it may be necessary to close the office again. I have not made that decision, but it is possible. And one of the struggles in that regard is that staff are being asked, sometimes they're being pressured to participate in public meetings, often without vaccine requirements and often without masks. And if we close the office, I'm not letting them participate in those meetings under those circumstances. So it is a difficult situation we're facing right now. I know we could talk about this for an hour and I don't want to do that, but I felt I needed to alert you just some of the key issues that we're confronting at the moment, how we're continuing to help our cities and towns with the effort. I see Adam's been very much engaged in these meetings. And as has Mayor Curtatone, he's not on the line, but George is, so I want to acknowledge that. And Mayor Driscoll as well, represented by Tom. And we're also watching out for the staff. That's a big issue of concern to me at the moment. People have questions, I'll do my best to answer. Okay, thank you, Erin.
Thank you so much, Mark, for that update. So next up on the agenda, I'm going to call on Mark again for the appointment of Lizzie Wyant as Deputy Executive Director for Public Affairs and Advocacy. Mark?
Thank you, Erin. So this is more upbeat than what I just talked to you about. I am really honored and just personally thrilled to bring before you my appointment of Lizzie Wyant as our first Deputy Executive Director for Public Affairs and Advocacy for your confirmation. It is, in fact, the practice, even though we haven't had to do it for quite some time, it is the practice at MAPC that the board hires the executive director, confirms the deputies. And this is the first time we've had to bring such a nomination before you, since we appointed Rebecca, which was, I don't know, I think 6 or 7 or 8 years ago, I believe. Lizzie has been an absolutely fabulous director of government affairs. She, along with her team, are responsible for a tremendous amount of our accomplishment in the legislature, both from a legislative perspective and a budget perspective. I can't say enough about the work she has done on behalf of the region during the COVID pandemic and recession. First, on COVID issues, dealing with infection and then vaccinations. And then after that, dealing with recovery. Every single one of these aspects to the pandemic and the recession has had a tremendous amount of public relations, communications, and legislative responsibility that Lizzie has played an enormous role in, if not in many cases led. I have found her increasingly over the years to be a key advisor of mine, always with good ideas, ready to implement the suggestions that I might make, but also, even more importantly, ready to argue with me when she doesn't think I'm right. And more often than not, not always, but more often than not, I will go along with that advice from her. We did go through a process for this appointment. We decided to post the job internally. It was possible that there might have been more than one applicant. There were not. There was only one applicant. And still went through a process of an initial interview with 4 members of the staff from the manager level and below, from departments that Lizzie is not going to oversee. And they were very, very thoughtful about their questions, and across 2 meetings debriefed me on the issues that were raised and their concerns and suggestions for the future. Adam and I then interviewed Lizzie at Arlington Town Hall, if I remember correctly. And after that, Lizzie met with the directors who will report to her. And I debriefed with them, and they gave me their feedback about that. I felt it was important to go through this process for both the board and the staff to see that this is a serious and important position. We are serious about how we fill it. And as you all know, it's the first of 3. I expect that this week or next week, we will be posting internally and externally the Deputy Executive Director for Planning and Sustainability, which will be the next position that we attempt to fill. And then further down the road, not immediately, we'll be posting for a Deputy Executive Director for Administration. But Lizzie, I think, is exceptionally well qualified and positioned to assume this role at this point in time. And I will see if she has anything to say. I don't think I actually told her that I would do that, but see if she has anything to say. And then I think the people may have questions for her or for me, but the correct process would be, if we're going to discuss it, I will ask Lizzie and the other members of the staff to briefly absent themselves from the Zoom and then to come back in when the board's deliberations are concluded.
Thank you, Mark. You did actually give me some warning.
Okay.
You were going to give me a chance to say something. And mostly, I just want to thank you for this opportunity. I'm really excited about the chance to move into this role. I have been in MAPC for about 6.5 years, but I actually first started working with MAPC when I moved to Massachusetts about 13 years ago. And I was transitioning from traditional legal practice into the advocacy world. I sat down with Mark Drazen. I was really, really nervous because I was kind of a baby advocate in this space. And I had a lot to learn. And honestly, in the 13 years since, I've learned just a tremendous amount from Mark and from all of our incredible staff at MAPC. It's just, I say this all the time, it's just a really, really special place to work. Everybody is very heart forward in our approach to this work, and I think really committed to making a difference for the residents in our region. And like Mark said, I really got to see that all these years through the policy work, but then most especially during COVID and as we move towards recovery. And I'm excited about the chance to kind of better integrate some of the departments at the agency with each other, particularly as we look ahead towards implementation of Metro Common and kind of de-siloing some of our work. So I'm really excited about the opportunity. I'm really honored that the staff is putting their trust and faith in me to move some of this work forward. And I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Lizzie. Sandra has a question. Sandra.
So I don't really have a question. I just wanted to say I'm just so thrilled that Lizzie, that you are coming forward for this job, and your depth, your breadth, your enthusiasm have just been incredible. And I can attest that my town manager in Bedford, Sarah Stanton, just always talks about how essential you've been during COVID. And so I know of municipalities around the region are also thrilled. So thank you so much. And I wanted to move that we accept the nomination, but I guess it's a little too early for that.
It is not. It is not. If there are no questions, so Sandra, as I understood it, you just moved to accept or approve the appointment of Lizzie as the Deputy Executive Director for Public Affairs and Advocacy. Is that correct, Sandra? Okay, great.
Second.
Second that.
Okay, I see the chat is basking in this appointment opportunity. I see that I'm going to say that John Dupree seconded it for everyone, and just kind of a personal thing. Mark mentioned, we haven't done this in a while, but I know Keith was there too, and Buzz, but I was there for the last vote too. So this feels very surreal. Tabor, it just feels very surreal, and I'm so excited for Lizzie to get the opportunity. I think it's such a great fit, and I'm really excited for where the agency is going forward as we move forward. So with that, I'm going to do roll call. So please unmute and please keep pumping up the chat as you will and as you wish, wishing Lizzie well because she deserves it. All right, here we go. Sharonda?
Aye.
Okay. Keith?
Aye.
Karen? Adam?
Aye.
Bob? Mayor Curtatone? Tom Daniel?
Aye.
John DePriest?
Aye.
Yolanda?
Aye.
Sandra?
Aye.
Mo Tabor?
Aye.
Angie?
Aye.
Steve Olenoff?
Aye.
Caitlin? George?
Aye.
Okay. Courtney?
Sorry.
It's okay. Jenny?
Aye.
Vandana?
Aye.
Sam?
Aye.
Steve Silvera?
Enthusiastic aye.
Thank you. Love it. Lauren? Mayor Spicer? Juan? Elaine?
Aye.
And Erin? Aye. Congratulations, Lizzie. You are unanimously appointed as, let me get the correct terminology, Deputy Executive Director for Public Affairs and Policy. We're going to have to figure out an acronym for you, which I know MAPC thrives at doing. If anyone can do it, planners can. So I look forward to seeing the initials. But again, congratulations. And we look forward to how you're going to step into this role. We're really excited. I'll speak for everyone when I say that. Okay.
Thank you all so, so much.
You're welcome. Next up is the next up is the report of the Legislative Committee, and I'm going to call on Legislative Chair Keith. And Keith, hold on 1 minute before, just in case I know how sometimes we get with legislative stuff. I just want to let everyone know I have a conflict and I have to depart at 12:30. So before I show up as a ghost, Adam will be taking over, Vice President Adam will be taking over at 12:30. But if if we get in the middle of something, I just want to kind of let you know that I didn't disappear impromptu. It is planned, and I look forward to the rest of the meeting. So go ahead, Legislative Chair Keith.
Well, thanks very much, President Aaron, and I'm happy to follow that agenda item to congratulate Deputy Executive Director for Public Affairs and Advocacy, Lizzie Wyant, and to thank Lizzie and her team for all the great work that they have done and continue to do for all of us. And I'm very, very happy about this well-deserved promotion for Lizzie. The Legislative Committee, I'm so happy that I will turn the agenda over to Lizzie, but I will just say along the way that one of the items on our agenda is to ask for support of legislation dealing with electric bicycles. And just to forewarn you that the legislative committee did meet on, I think it was November 10th, to vote to recommend that the executive committee support this legislation. And with that, I will turn it over to our Deputy Executive Director.
Thank you so much, Keith. Yep, there's always time to roll up our sleeves and get back to the work. So I wanted to talk quickly about what's going on with ARPA in the State House, and then I'm going to turn it over to Kasha and the Government Affairs team to walk us through the e-bikes bill that we're going to be taking up today. But I think when last we met around this table, we thought that the legislature was going to move ahead with the ARPA bill before they went into informal session. They did not do that, and instead actually passed the compromise ARPA legislation just last week in informals. And the team has been working on a summary of what's included in that legislation, which is now before the governor, which he has 10 days to kind of up or down. He does have line item authority over that because it's considered a money bill, big money bill. I think they're working behind the scenes to put a link in the chat for you so you can kind of see that summary, but we're going to send out today. The kind of highlight reel of what was included in the legislation, it ended up being a $4.1 billion package. It included, I want to say around 1.65 or 1.45 of surplus funding from FY21, which it was really important that we actually spend that before the end of this calendar year. So that was part of the reason the bill needed to move in informal session. And then the ARPA money is about, I think they spent about 2.5 billion of ARPA dollars. So we have about $2.3 billion in ARPA, state level ARPA funding that has not yet been spent. That is a problem for future us. Two things that were kind of pre-conferenced in the bill. So that was $500 million for premium pay for essential workers, and then $500 million that went into the unemployment trust fund. And those two pieces had been agreed upon by both branches in advance of debate in their own respective branches. And then the rest of the pots of funding in the legislation they were slightly different between the two branches. And ultimately, that's how we got up to that total $4.1 billion number, because the compromise was ultimately kind of taking the higher number in both the House and the Senate in most instances. Again, so I think Kasha did put in the chat what the fact sheet is, so you can kind of see what some of those expenditures are. And in that fact sheet, we call out most of the things that we were watching most closely. I think particularly, we were really glad to see $200 million included for local and regional public health. We felt like that was really important dollars to be spent, particularly in the wake of a pandemic, or I guess mid-pandemic, because it just never goes away. And then the other thing that we were really glad to see was $600 million for several different important key housing programs. We, joined with some of our advocacy allies in trying to push for a total of $1 billion in housing. But to be honest, I think we might end up getting there through the next tranche of expenditures on ARPA. And we will obviously continue to push for a lot of those pieces. Really important investments were included around economic and workforce development. I feel like it's actually a place where the legislature has fallen short of investments, kind of preemptive investments prior to the pandemic. So they put a lot of good provisions in place there through the ARPA dollars. And then on the infrastructure side of things, continued to invest in broadband, which was a commitment both branches made. And then more money for water and sewer. And then a lot of us pushed for investments in the MVP program, which obviously MAPC has worked on very closely with a number of our communities. And we were glad to see them include that, and also kind of include a specific investment in low-income communities. So again, I think we were really glad to see where the ARPA bill itself landed. I think we all wish it had happened a little sooner, but so many of the provisions that the legislature included really hewed very closely to things that MAPC was pushing for them to do. So I'd say we're right now just in the position of urging the governor to sign it. I want to stop and see. Yeah, I see questions from Sandra. Is it okay if I just take questions? Great. Okay, go ahead, Sandra.
Oh, thanks. I was just wondering how much this bill differs from what the governor originally proposed.
It's the buckets are actually pretty similar. Although, the administration did take kind of a different approach to premium pay. They did include that. I think the biggest difference is that it does include, several $100 million worth of earmarks for local projects, which obviously the governor did not include in his original proposal, because I think that's ultimately how we got the compromise across the finish line in the building, was that so many of those local earmarks were included. Not all, I would say the vast majority of those local earmarks are not unrelated to COVID and COVID recovery efforts, but there are some that I think it's fair to say are a little outside the scope. Mark's doing like this. I'll be political. They're a little outside the scope of COVID recovery. But the buckets are actually substantially similar to what the governor proposed. Tweaks around the margins. And again, I do actually think we're going to get some of the numbers up higher than they are right now with kind of the next tranche of ARPA dollars.
I would add one thing, Lizzie, if I could, that we actually did manage to get significant funding for at least two areas where the governor's bill did not provide significant funding. One was in regard sort of within the housing section, money for public housing and modernization. And the second was just a very substantial amount of money committed to our local public health infrastructure. What we did not get, two areas we did not get, was a substantial reform of the public health system under what is commonly called SAFE 2.0. We're going to continue to pursue that legislatively. And the other area that the governor wanted and neither of us got was direct funding for downtown revitalization. We did get money for small business support, which is obviously related. Didn't really get the money for downtown revitalization. And I have already had a meeting with the OHED about how we pursue that in the next tranche of funding, because we do think that is really a critical post-COVID recovery element. And in that particular instance, MAPC is very much aligned with the administration on that question.
Any other questions? Great. So I think if anyone's having trouble with that fact sheet, we're also going to send it out after the meeting, so you will be able to see it. The one thing I just wanted to note very briefly before I turn it over to Kasia is that kind of the one other big thing that's happened in terms of priorities that we are following at MAPC is that we did pull out of the Transportation and Climate Initiative. And I just, wanted to know, a lot of us, we worked very closely on this at MAPC. We worked with our sister regional planning agencies across the Commonwealth, but also across the entire Transportation Climate Initiative region, which is sort of the New England region. I think I have said this a couple of times colloquially. I think TCI really suffered from COVID because a lot of states actually had to take it to their legislature, which they couldn't do during the early days of COVID, and then very difficult to take a tax vote now when we actually have either a lot of money coming in from the federal government or kind of asking residents to pay more. So I think, the timing was definitely had a big impact on the Transportation Climate Initiative. But I wanted to note it here because it's obviously something we followed very closely. A lot of the partnerships that we made with advocacy allies during TCI are partnerships that will obviously continue in our work. And we've been in contact with, kind of the entire advocacy spectrum of folks who worked on TCI to make sure that those partnerships continue and we can figure out ways to actually address GHG emissions in our transportation sector. So we're having a lot of those ongoing conversations. TCI was kind of one piece of the puzzle in addressing our transportation challenges. And it was a big piece. And on the funding side and on the emission side, we have to figure out ways to kind of move forward with it, not part of the picture right now. So I just wanted to make sure everyone was kind of aware that that had happened and that we are paying very close attention to kind of the fallout from that. So with
I might note that we did have a piece in Commonwealth on that issue.
Yes, we did. Yep.
And-
Mark wrote an excellent piece in Commonwealth, which we can also share with folks if you haven't seen it. Yep. All right. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Kasha Hart from the Government Affairs team to talk about the e-bikes bill for your consideration.
Great. Thank you so much, Lizzie. What an exciting day at XCOM. So this bill would help clarify some statutory language around the definition and the operational regulations for electric bicycles. I'm sure everyone has seen in their community that walking and biking has really surged during the pandemic. And I think with that has come an increased interest in using electric assist bicycles. They allow people to travel up hills easier. They allow people to travel longer distances on a bike and just make cycling a more viable option for more people. So we're hearing more interest in using e-bikes and more interest in cycling overall, which is great. We want to enable that. But the current statutory language around motorized bicycles in the Mass General laws doesn't quite apply to electric bicycles as they are used and manufactured today. They're more applicable to a heavier duty bicycle, and there's also some vehicle registration requirements that you probably wouldn't think to follow if you were purchasing an electric bicycle, as most people use e-bikes as they would a regular manual pedal bike. So this legislation would basically just put Massachusetts on par with 40 other states that have existing language on the books around e-bikes. It creates 3 different definitions of e-bikes using different classes. And so the classes are based on the speed of the vehicle and whether or not the person has to actually pedal in order to move the bike forward. But we've been hearing from cities and towns that this clarity would be really important for their ability to develop regulations around e-bike use in their communities. And we've had some conversations as well with members of the Blue Bikes community. This is not the only barrier to introducing e-bikes into the Blue Bike system, but it is one hurdle that we really need to clear first if e-bikes are going to be introduced into the Blue Bike system. And so the language itself is relatively straightforward. It just creates that new definition of what the class 1, 2, and 3 e-bikes are, creates those operational definitions, and it makes clear that cities and towns and state agencies do have the ability to develop more specific regulations on roadways within their jurisdiction. I think that's really it in terms of the summary. Happy to answer any questions. I see Sandra has her hand up.
Thank you. Thanks, Kasha. So it just seems hard and odd to me that individual municipalities, and I know that they have control over their own roadways, excepting of course state roads, but that individual municipalities would develop regulations that could differ from town to town. I mean, you cross a line and then you're subject to different regulations. So is there any way to avoid just the piecemeal patchwork approach to this whole thing?
Yeah, Adam, I don't know if you wanted to jump in on that. I saw your hand for a second, but I can speak to it. Yeah, please.
I mean, I just quickly wanted to jump in and say, Sandra, I don't think it would be odd from a speed regulation point of view to have differing regulations from community to community. And I think that's not all, but a big part of this, that whether it be on the roadway or on bikeways, having regulations about what speed various vehicles can travel on those roadways. So I do think that's part of it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think from what we're hearing too, it would be, we anticipate this would be used in really limited circumstances. If there is, for example, a really, really high traffic corridor where there may be concern about e-bikes or limiting them on a temporary basis if there are major events. In all of our conversations with Blue Bikes communities, I think there's really, really deep understanding and having value of a regional system. You don't know municipal boundaries on a bicycle, at least I don't. So I think it would be used in very limited circumstances. Steve?
Yeah, at the legislative committee meeting, Buzz and I had some discussion about this. We raised those points about, one town could prohibit it and another town wouldn't. So how do you drive down a trail that goes from one town to another? And there was another issue about, whether they also should be on off-road trails and who controls that, and if it's DCR trail, for instance. So we were told, we're not approving the basic concept here, but not those individual items, because I think there definitely needs to be more work on those items.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Yeah, so you agree with that? And it's clear that we're approving the general support for this bill, but not all the provisions in it.
Oh,
I don't think that's actually the case. I don't know. I think we're supporting this bill. We will continue to negotiate with all parties about prospective amendments to the bill, but we feel this is a reasonable balance between, the state allowing what are clearly bicycles to go pretty much anywhere, and the individual municipalities to have the kinds of control over vehicles that they usually have, which I doubt. I don't think that Adam is going to say the bikes on the first part of the Minuteman must be red, and by the time they get to Bedford, they have to be blue. I don't think that's going to happen. So, yeah, I think we are endorsing the bill.
Well, it's a concern if they actually prohibit them in one town and not in the next town. Isn't that a serious consideration?
Yes, it is. But I don't think anyone's going to prohibit them.
Okay.
They're bicycles. And if this is what we need to do to get it through, I think it's a reasonable compromise. I will ask Lizzie and Kasha if they have more information on the possibility that if this legislation passed, whether they feel individual communities are likely to ban the e-bikes. And right now, none of them are legal, to be clear.
Exactly.
Yeah, we have not heard that. I also see Eric Barassa, our transportation director, is on, and I think Eric, if you wanted to kind of weigh in, you're welcome to speak to this. It is not a concern that I really have, Steve. I think the bigger question is how we make sure that they are legal on our roads and that people are, essentially are using, and that cities and towns have enough oversight so that they can make sure that people are using them safely for their own streets.
Yeah, and I mean, my understanding is the heart of this legislation is classifying particularly the class 1 bicycles as bicycles that can go in bike lanes. And that is the biggest challenging thing here when it comes to cities and towns actively promoting electric bikes and pedal assist bikes. And that if we ever want to see them as part of like the Blue Bikes system, we couldn't actually procure what's out there right now because of how they're operated and how users are required to have driver's licenses and things like that. And so I think that's really the heart of what this is doing, is clarifying that. In terms of allowing allowing municipalities to have some oversight over where class 3 ones go, I think that's appropriate because those are higher speed, not pedal assist, but the kind that you can use like a throttle on. And so to me, that all seems very appropriate.
So Aaron's gone, so I guess I'm calling on people. So Buzz, you have your hand raised.
All of which. Thanks. Just to go back to the earlier comment, I'm not so worried. I'm firmly in favor of this. I think we need to start identifying this. So they're going to be there. They're really important. I would say the last mile and the first mile to transit, they're a game changer. The place that we have had some pause, and you all know I'm a conservation type, is the extent to which towns, conservation commissions, land trusts, even DCR will have to deal with electric bikes on trails. And on single track trails, mountain bikes alone can be difficult. And so there will be a push, I suspect, that to limit or regulate e-bikes off-road and off organized bike trails. So I don't think anyone's going to worry about the Minuteman bike path. But the trails in Estherbrook Woods might have a problem. I don't think there's a solution at this bill. I don't think this bill stops that, and I don't think it's a real problem. So I think I'm not worried about it, and I really think the bill's a good bill because we need it. I want one.
Well, yeah, and what this bill does is it actually clarifies the different types of bikes. Because right now, if you said no e-bikes can be on a type of facility, if you said no e-bike can be on a type of facility, then it's everything. And this actually creates these classifications, which allows for a determination based on the speed of it.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize what Eric said. I think these 3 class types, this format exists in something like almost 40 other states. And I think having that nuance that's more reflective of the different kinds of e-bikes that are on the market today is going to be really important as we think about these regulatory questions in the future.
Great. Thank you, Kasia. Any other questions or a motion to endorse the recommendation of the Legislative Committee?
I'll make such a motion.
Motion made by George.
I'll second.
Who is that second?
Tabor.
Tabor. Thank you, Tabor. All right. Any further discussion on the motion? All right. Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Sharonda?
Aye.
Keith?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
Adam, I vote yes. Robert? Mayor Curtatone? Tom? John DePriest?
Aye.
Yolanda?
Aye.
Sandra?
Aye.
Mo? Tabor?
Aye.
Angie?
Aye.
Steve Olenoff?
Aye.
Caitlin? George?
Aye.
Courtney? Jenny?
Aye.
Vandana?
Abstain.
Sam?
Aye.
Steve Silvera? I think he left. Lauren Shirtliff? Mayor Spicer? Juan? Elaine?
Abstain.
And Aaron is not with us. Motion passes. Thank you all very much. All right, so switch to my other screen. Now I know what Erin meant when she said she wanted more screens when she's doing this. Next agenda item, number 7, review and approval of the FY22 work plan covering the clean energy, communications, data services, government affairs, and land use departments. So who should I turn that over to first?
You can turn it over to me, Adam, if that's okay. And I would add to that list one more department, the transportation department. So there are 6 departments where we are asking you to review the work plan and approve the work plan. Again, normally this is done on an annual basis. I'm sorry that it has taken us so long to get it to you. Honestly, the main impediment was just that this board had so many other things to do, particularly related to Metro Common. And the uncertainties of COVID also contributed to that. On the screen, I believe, is Ben Faust from the Department of Strategic Initiatives. Ben has played a major role in working with the departments to put this work plan together, to ensure there is a reasonable consistency of presentation, and to try and keep me reviewing it, which has been by far the most important task and the most difficult one. So I want to thank Ben tremendously for his work in this regard. We have with us the heads of most of the departments. I don't want to spend too long going through all of these, but I will ask each of them to highlight like 2 interesting, key, new, important items from the work plan document that is before you. And then we'll see if there are any questions. I am not asking them to give a comprehensive summary of their entire work plan for the year. So I am going to start. I'm not sure I'm doing this in the same order, but I'll do it as I see them on the screen with Cami Peterson, who is our Director of Clean Energy.
Thanks, Mark, and hello, everyone. Nice to see you all. I had, I think, at least 4 that I had noted for myself that I might wanted to raise, so I will narrow that down to 2 and share with you guys a couple of highlights of things that we've been working on and are excited to really accelerate in this coming 6 months and into the following years. So a bit of a different project that many of you might not have heard too much about that we've been working on is an area called equitable brownfields to brightfields. So brownfields are previously contaminated lands that have been remediated, and brightfields are a alternative use of those lands, generally solar installations, but can be other types of renewable energy. And so that program has existed for a while in Massachusetts and throughout the country. It can be very expensive, the remediation of brownfields, and in particular, in getting it ready for other uses, as well as obviously the expenses of installing something new, clean energy technology in this case, on that. The focus that we took was really on equitable brownfields to brightfields, which have not seen very many installations here in Massachusetts or throughout the country. We researched that in pretty deep depth and really only came up with a few examples of a case where you could find direct benefits to marginalized populations in those communities from the renewable energy and the remediation of those brownfields to that renewable energy installation. So that was of particular interest to us. And we've worked on community shared solar and other types of renewable energy where we have been able to draw that direct line to equitable benefits. So did a lot of research on that, provided some data tools this last year, and are now really looking to see how we can apply those. And the reason that I raised that example today is because I think the new federal infrastructure bill that recently passed has a good amount of funding in there for brownfields. And there'll be much more money coming into this space than had previously existed, which I think opens up the door to a new opportunity to really explore, are there potential areas that had likely been too expensive or had too many obstacles prior to really kind of take this the next step and see if there's places where we can deploy or at least lay out the structure for how to get closer to that deployment here in Massachusetts. So an area that I think will have some more legs in the next year, even beyond some of the additional resources we had been planning on when we put together the bullet point in the annual work plan. The other one I want to draw your attention to is another area that we've been excited about for a while, but have heard from communities for a while that they're interested in, but just this past year have really started to dig deeper into that work, and that's electric school buses. So obviously, most of our school buses have and continue to be run on diesel, which is a particularly dirty fuel, both for air emission pollutants as well as carbon dioxide and greenhouse gas emissions. So we've been working on a project with the city of Beverly on deploying believe their second electric school bus, working with Highland Transportation, a company that has been innovating a new finance model. And the work that we're doing that will be developed much more over this next year will be to disseminate those best practices and put together hopefully a potential procurement for what that could look like with multiple communities. And we've started to really think of that as an exciting space to really understand the different ways to stack financing, because they're much more expensive than a regular diesel school bus is traditionally, and to really take advantage of innovative approaches to that. So looking at how we lease parking spaces to operate charging stations and take advantage of new utility programs on demand charging. So I will stop there, but really excited about the work going forward and welcome any questions that folks have.
So I think if it's all right with you, Adam, I'm going to move along and save questions for the end.
Yeah, why don't you do that? That makes sense.
Okay, because time is late. Thank you, Cami. Is Amanda Linehan present? I don't think I saw her. Amanda, are you there? So I'm going to note a couple of things from the communications department. I just have picked 2. There are many others, but one is more work on training and empowering agency staff to perform media interviews in their area of expertise, and also trying to grow our core of staff members who can speak and conduct interviews in other languages on media that are frequently outside of MAPC's reach. So that is an area that we think is quite important and that we're going to continue to work on. A second is to adapt to virtual and remote work by strategically streaming internal and external meetings and events across platforms. Our community engagement staff and our communication staff particularly, both of which I might note will be reporting to Lizzie in her new role, are very focused on this issue of effective ways to manage hybrid meetings, to continue to manage meetings that are remote, to provide that content in an on-time manner to people in the public and to allies that we are working with. And that is an important role that the communications department is going to take in this so-called, I wish, post-COVID era. Those are two items from the communications staff. And now I think I'm going to call on Eric Barassa to give us a couple of highlights from transportation. Eric.
Hi, thank you, Mark. Yeah, two highlights from the work plan. One is the work that we're doing with the MBTA and a lot of the municipalities in the urban core to support the entire Better Bus initiative, which kind of encompasses all improvements to the bus system, the bus network redesign, the effort to create more bus priority corridors like the dedicated bus lanes that were announced and opened on Columbus Avenue earlier in the fall. Upgrades to the maintenance facilities to facilitate more bus capacity and electric buses. So there's a big body of work that we're doing with the T to support them on a number of these efforts. Some of it is in outreach to cities and towns and the legislature and stakeholders across the region. And then some of it is actually on the ground planning. We're working with the city of Boston and actually staff at CTPS2 to look at parking along a couple corridors in Alston and Brighton to look at the parking utilization to be able to repurpose that space for dedicated bus lanes. And we're involved in a number of other corridors across the city. So I think that's a really exciting initiative, and that's a priority for the MBTA to really invest in and upgrade the bus system. And I think that's going to be a big focus of increased investment from the federal infrastructure dollars as well over the next couple of years. Another area that I'm really excited about, and I think we're actually going to get a boost from a private foundation, is being able to expand the work that we're doing in advancing our regional trail and greenway network, which we've branded as the landline. And there's a number of key gaps that we've identified across the region, and we're looking to put together a report that kind of highlights those gaps and focuses in on a few places, and even have the potential to have some funding to be able to offer design and sort of preliminary engineering and design services to cities and towns, or potentially even the Department of Conservation and Recreation, to get some concepts from planning actually more into the design pipeline to take advantage again of increased federal funding opportunities. So those are two areas that I want to highlight.
Eric, thank you very much. And I'm going to move on to Lizzie. I know she's here to talk a little bit about upcoming activities in the Government Affairs Department.
Sure. Well, so, a lot of the focus of our work this year in government affairs we knew was going to be on ARPA, and in fact, it has. I think we really wanted to make sure that we took a more equity in all policies approach to our work inside the government affairs team. And so you kind of see that throughout our work plan, is that we're really trying to elevate our equity policy priorities in our legislative agenda this year. And that was particularly true in our COVID work. And then I think the other big place that's kind of a little different than in years past, and I mentioned this earlier, is really trying to better connect our policy work across the agency. So rather than kind of thinking just with our, these are our housing policies, these are our climate policy priorities, to think more holistically about how we actually advance those priorities together. And again, I think ARPA and actually Metro Common really gave us the first chance to talk about these priorities that way. So we're talking kind of with like our whole head on all of these issues. So thinking about things like climate smart housing or housing and transportation together. And those are honestly the kind of the biggest differences in our work planning efforts and our policy priorities from years past to this year. And again, I really think ARPA really gave us an opportunity to hit the ground running on that advocacy. So we were glad to see some of those early wins in the bill that came out.
Lizzie, thank you very much. I'm going to do data services and then offer the last word to Mark Rassicott for land use. No, I haven't taken over responsibility for the data services department, which is good because I can barely count. But Tim Reardon was here until 12:30 and he had to leave for another and other meetings. So I'm going to take a few highlights from data services. One is, we have had a Metro Common research agenda that Jessie Partridge and her team and co-workers from other departments have been focused on throughout Metro Common. And that has produced a series of reports and policy recommendations within Metro Common based upon that research. Now is a moment for us to develop a new research agenda going forward in the early implementation years of Metro Common. So figuring out that research agenda, deciding what we're going to focus on, making sure that representatives of underrepresented communities are actually included in that work and can benefit from that work are all very important things that Jessie and her team are thinking about right now. I'll mention two items which are important in the research arena. One is continued research into residential displacement, its dynamics, what not only happens to the buildings people were in, but what also happens to people when they move to other places. We have done some research on both residential and commercial displacement, and we're hoping to expand that and get more policy recommendations and good plans for localities out of that. A second area is Connor Gately produced his report on the intersection between smart growth and vehicle miles traveled and greenhouse gas emissions. We are now trying to prepare more detailed scenarios demonstrating that vehicle miles traveled and transportation GHG effects of alternative land policies, both regional and sub-municipal growth patterns, pricing policies, auto costs, and other variables to give a better picture of that and try and demonstrate the importance of smart growth and sustainable development in reducing our carbon footprint. And lastly, I think I mentioned a little bit during the executive director's report, the digital services folks are working increasingly in the arena of local and regional broadband access plans, assisting municipalities with implementation, conducting procurements with Mark Fine's group for community-owned broadband hardware and services, and identifying policies to help close the digital divide. And that is going to be an area of ongoing importance as we emerge from into what we hope will be recovery, both economic and from a health perspective, because more and more people are going to depend upon these digital tools. Last one up is now the land use department. I will call upon Mark Rathcott to say a few words.
Thank you, Mark. And apologies to everybody. My camera is not cooperating with Zoom, so I am here and I'm actually in the office. Under the land use department, we will obviously be continuing to do the broad range of economic development, housing, open space, and other land use work that we've done in the past, working with our member municipalities. What we want to do is to have an increased emphasis on public engagement and reach out to previously underserved populations as part of that work in carrying forward our Metro Common goals, as well as the MAPC strategic goals. Let me just highlight two areas. I think in housing, I think that there'll be a lot of emphasis over this next year on not only providing additional housing, affordable housing, but we'll be doing a lot of work in implementation of the MBTA communities multifamily requirement. At least we anticipate doing that once the regulations actually come out from the state and provide guidance for us. Then we can actually get into the nitty-gritty work with municipalities on doing the zoning changes to implement that. And then I think the other major focus I'd like to talk about is under economic development. I hear there's a few dollars coming from the federal government. And so we'd like to try to capitalize on that. We're already starting to work with communities on the local rapid recovery planning work. We have also applied for a Build Back Better Regional Challenge federal grant that would focus on cybersecurity and digital access, as well as training of folks to get involved with cybersecurity jobs. And we're in the midst of planning for a Good Jobs Challenge grant that would be filed in January that would, at least at this time, looks like it would focus on training folks to work in the childcare industry, which when you think of it initially, you might not think is a good job, but there are career ladders there that can provide advancement for folks who can start at the lower levels and work their way up within childcare, and also in clean energy installation work, which is the second focus of the Good Jobs Challenge grant as it's currently envisioned. And with that, I'll say this out. There's a lot more in the 6 pages that's in the report.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, everyone. I'll turn it back over to Adam.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you, everyone, for making those reports. Mark, we need to vote on these?
We do, unless there are questions.
Any questions about what has been presented? Seeing none. Oh, go ahead, Sam.
Just does this reflect all the areas of the work plan, or are there any parts that were not reported on?
Yes, this reflects about half, Sam. We will do this dance again in January on the remaining departments. I just didn't think it was practical to bring everyone before the committee all at one time.
Makes sense. Thanks.
Adam?
Karen.
Yeah, I just want to say, I mean, it's great information, but and thank you for everyone that from what I read, and I didn't read every single line yet, but I will. The plan certainly aligns with all of the priorities that have been already well vetted by this committee and adapts to obviously current challenges. So I just want to commend you all on your leadership and thoughtfulness in putting this together. But best part for me was there were really no big surprises. So that means we're on course. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Karen.
Any other questions? Would anybody like to make a motion?
I move that we approve the work plan for the areas presented today.
Motion made by Yolanda. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Karen. Buzz, did you have a question before I call the roll?
We try to get there. No, I'm occasionally a parliamentarian, and I don't know whether it's appropriate to approve half a work plan and not another half program. If anything, we could either wait knowing they're going to work on it, or maybe you need a friendly amendment that says that a motion to amend to approve those sections which were described today only, rather than the others. So sorry about being a parliamentarian. Since I can't vote, I might as well be a pain.
Buzz, the motion was to only approve the work plan based on those presented today. On those portions presented today. That was the motion.
Okay. Well, I won't be so much of a parliamentarian to reword what that is. It'll work, but we ought to be aware of that kind of problem going forward. But I'll live with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Buzz. The blessings and curses of inviting attorneys to these meetings. Any other questions before I call the roll on the motion? Okay, seeing none.
Do we have a second?
Yeah, the second was by Karen.
Okay.
Sharonda. Keith. Karen.
Aye.
Adam, I vote aye. Robert. Mayor Curtatone. Tom. John DePriest.
Aye.
Yolanda.
Aye.
Sandra.
Aye.
Mo. Tabor.
Aye.
Angie.
Aye.
Steve Olenoff.
Aye.
Caitlin. George. No George. Courtney. Oh, thank you, George. Jenny.
Aye.
Vandana. Sam.
Aye.
Steve Silvera. Lauren Shirtliff. Mayor Spicer. Juan. Elaine,
Aye.
and Aaron is no longer here. Motion carries. Thank you, everybody. All right, so next item on the agenda is a mention, sorry, I'm scrolling through these screens, of the date of the next executive committee meeting, January 19th, 2022. Anything further to report on that, Mark? Is that date still look good?
It still looks good to me.
Great, great. Any questions about that? Don't see any there. And then our final agenda item before adjournment is any other business not known at the time of the posting of this agenda.
I
Mark,
do not have anything, Adam.
Great, great. Anybody else have any new business?
May I just share one quick thought?
Please.
This is George, and I'm in my car, and I'm in a spot where sometimes my phone drops out. But I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you on behalf of Mayor Curtatone, for whom I have served as his alternate on this executive committee for quite a while. As you know, come the January meeting, he will no longer be the mayor of Somerville. But he has really appreciated all that MAPC has done for him, for us in Somerville, and I look forward to I work with the new mayor come January. So thank you.
I would also thank both Mayor Curtatone and George, and also Mayor Spicer. And neither of those two will be returning. Thanks to Mayor Driscoll, who is returning, and Tom Daniel. It raises an interesting question as to whether those positions remain or are vacant, and we will discuss those with all parliamentarians wishing to opine on the question.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you, George, and please pass our thanks on to Mayor Curtatone as well. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
Made by
Second.
Karen,
Second.
seconded by George. One more call of the roll here. Bear with me. Sharonda, Keith,
Aye.
Karen,
Aye.
Adam, I vote aye. Robert, Mayor Curtatone, Tom Daniel, John DePriest,
Aye.
Yolanda,
Aye.
Sandra,
Aye.
Mo, Tabor,
Aye.
Angie,
Aye.
Steve Olenoff,
Aye.
Caitlin, George Proakis,
Aye.
Courtney, Jenny,
Aye.
Vandana, Sam,
Aye.
Steve Silvera, Lauren, Mayor Spicer, Juan, Elaine,
Aye.
and Aaron. And motion passes unanimously. Thank you, everybody, and happy holidays.
Thank you. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
Welcome. Take care.